Hello and welcome to the Quiet Light Podcast. I'm Pat Yates. Today's episode is going to be kind of fun. One of the things people don't quite understand when they launch a business is, how do I tie in my branding? How do I tie in my marketing? How do I look like I'm consistent versus inconsistent in a lot of different ways? I think I've talked with Kate today on the podcast. Kate DiLeo, our guest from Minneapolis, Minnesota, has a company called Brand Trifecta. And Brand Trifecta is going to help you in your branding, get you started in the right positions, make sure that all your assets and everything that you do in your business and your messages are all consistent. It's interesting how, as I started to talk to Kate, it dawned on me that those brand messages need to be really consistent along a lot of lines, because anymore, people want to understand the kind of companies they're doing business with, where they're from, what are their philosophies. Things like that are so important. And I know Kate is going to talk about some practical examples, how it's helped people's sales before in the past. So I'm super excited. She's a mom. She's done a lot with business. She's really excitable. I'm so excited to have Kate in the podcast. So let's get right to it. Kate, welcome to the Quiet Light Podcast. It's awesome to have you here today.
Thank you, Pat. It's great to be here.
Yeah, so I know you're from Minneapolis, Minnesota, where our founder is from. He's not a very nice guy, so don't run into him. Mark Downs. If you ever see him, just run the other way. Don't ever run into him in the city and actually talk to him. He's not a very nice guy. No, I'm kidding. He's one of the best guys in the world. If you ever have to run into Mark, you would have loved that. So, but I'm anxious to talk to you. I know that you have a lot of things going on. You're kind of a brand ambassador. You have Brand Trifecta. Obviously, you help people understand in business, whether it's consulting or a lot of different ways. But first off, we'd love to hear about you. We already said you're from Minneapolis, but tell us about you, family, anything you'd want to tell us.
Well, yeah. So when I'm not over here doing all the brand things, geeking out with companies on branding, I am a mom of 4 young children. We've got a big blended family. So we've got ages 5, 7, 9, and 9. So Pat, basically, I love that. I think my life is, in control between the hours of 8 and 4. And then as soon as those children get off the bus, I have nothing under control, right? You're just trying to keep them alive at that point, like get them to bed. So mom of 4, busy with that, avid traveler, scuba diver, hiker, skier, love all that stuff. And really brand is my passion. I love being part of the entrepreneurial community and the marketing community, getting to talk with people about how do we all level up our messaging and really are some of our initiatives so that we're really achieving next level growth.
That makes a lot of sense. Actually, it's interesting because I'm a family man as well. I have 3 boys. So I remember that time. They're much older than them now, but I remember that time and it's total chaos. So you never seem to feel very comfortable that that's the case. So anyway, but I know that you have the business Brand Trifecta, and I know that you do a lot of building brands and you had a corporate name around us. So give us an overview of what you do in Brand Trifecta or basically in your work life.
Yeah, sure. So previously I've been a consultant for about 10 years, Pat. And then this year we just launched the Brand Trifecta, which is it is a tech company. So what it is it's a brand building platform that's for founders and marketers and sales leaders who specifically want to go through the process that I teach called the Brand Trifecta to build their brand message in a matter of weeks. And it's an interactive platform. It's highly collaborative, and it's really enabling people to come out the other end with a message that's going to drive revenue. And that's actually the work that I've done for the last decade as a consultant, as a teacher and speaker, is teaching people this formulaic approach to their brand message that's really rooted in buyer psychology, that gets to the heart of what does somebody need to know in that first 15 to 30 seconds to want to have a conversation and take the next step with our brands. What do they need to know, and how do we write that or say that in a way that is authentic to who we are as an organization, but then also deeply resonates at a heart level with our prospects and customers.
So let's break that down. Let's say there's someone that's trying to get into business. We have a lot of listeners. They're either looking to buy a business from Quiet Light or are building a business, or entrepreneurs thinking about their next venture. So let's just say that someone either acquires or starts a business that doesn't have great branding. Let's just say that you identify them as a client. What are the main things you need to look at to understand if your business is in a position that it's branded well? And if not, how do they take those first steps with you?
Well, sure. So there's a couple layers to that answer. So I think first and foremost, let me kind of reverse engineer this. When do you know that you need to look at your brand and maybe do a slight pivot? I think the symptoms that I hear the most often are, gosh, Kate, I'm struggling to get the right kind of prospects to the table. Or, whoa, our sales cycle time is really long. Or our close rate, we're getting people to the table, but we're not closing them. Something's off at that point. Something's slightly off, meaning it's not a sales issue. It's often what you're saying and to whom. So the work that then comes from analyzing that, Pat, is looking at your brand from the perspective of really brand is the promise of who we are and what we do and the value that we deliver. And if we understand that, it's way more than the color purple. And I'm not even a graphic designer, right? When we think about that, what we have to decide is who are we going after and why? And then what is the message we're delivering to them that's going to compel them to take the next step and buy? But often when you're going into business or looking to start a new venture, we tend to get into our mindset of, I need to look at what the competition is doing, or I need to serve everybody with what I'm doing in order to generate revenue. And those are the two biggest mistakes that I see. We've got to decide who we are, who we're actually going after, and niche in and get really good at delivering a good message to a singular group of people. If we do that, revenue comes.
Wow. So when people are looking at their branding, what are the common mistakes that people make? Because I think a lot of people might assume, my branding is great. I have a little logo or whatever it's going to be. But I think it's an overall philosophy. I mean, what are the things that people typically will make mistakes on in their branding?
So one of the big ones is leading with complex stories. It's funny, Pat. Let's assume you and I meet for the first time. We meet in a room, we shake hands, and you say, "Okay, it's so nice to meet you." What's typically the first thing you're going to ask me?
I don't know. That's a great question. I probably think something more personal. I wouldn't necessarily think business.
If it's on the business side, you might go, "Well, what do you do? Tell me about yourself. What do you do?" Right?
Okay,
you might ask something along those lines.
That is kind of personal though, too. So
it is, right?
Yeah,
now you live with personal, but if it's a business conversation, a lot of people want to know, what do you do? What do you do? What do you do? And if I went into some complex, convoluted story, like, Pat, let me talk about the time I was 12. Like, have you ever done that before? And you see the eyes glaze over, like, and I lost him. Here's the biggest mistake that we make. We lead with convoluted stories that are all about us. And we miss the point that what the other person is actually queuing in and looking for in that conversation, that brand conversation, is really getting to the nuts and bolts and 5 and 6 words to say, here's how I give value. This is what I do.
Right. I mean, that's amazing. So tell us a little bit when you go into, building a brand. Let's say that we come into you and someone does it. What all assets and things are involved in that? I think people may not even understand the scope of when you say, let's just assume it's a brand new startup. They bought it from Quiet Light. They never did any branding or anything around it. What are the things they need to consider? Because I probably haven't thought of all of them.
Yeah, that's a great question, because brand is this big nebulous thing that we don't always think about. You're like, well, that's a marketing thing. Well, actually, no. Brand is a revenue generation thing. And I'm a founder, a 2-time founder, and I predominantly work with founders, by the way, who are coming to the table going, if I don't know, Kate, what I'm saying and to whom, I'm not going to be able to sell. So that's what brand helps you do. It helps you sell. Now, in the context of what that means from a pure, just tactical perspective here, in marketing speak, there's things for your brand, such as your vision statement and your mission statement and your values. Those are internal brand statements, Pat, that typically drive where the organization is going. But really, the crux of your brand is the sales message. It's the 1, 2, 3 punch of what you say in that first 30 seconds. And that includes things like a tagline that says what you do, a value proposition statement, which is really like that statement that goes, here's the problem you're facing and here's how to solve it.
Okay.
And then a set of differentiator statements, the 1, 2, 3 ways you're different and better than the rest. It's really these 3 things in that order that you cannot miss with your brand. You've got to have them nailed, because that is the step that compels somebody to go, that's interesting. I want to have a conversation, take the next step.
So following these steps definitely gets you an overall branding, and then everything from there, you just try to fit it in, whether it's coloring, whether it's message, whether it's theme, things like that. You just lay out the entire process for them. So I know that when you come in and you're working with you, again, we're talking with Kate DiLeo and you're branding at Brand Trifecta. I was looking at the site and it's really amazing, because you talk a lot of terms that I'm not really 100% perfect understanding of, but tell us about the Trifecta program.
Yeah, absolutely. So the Trifecta program, this actual product, this platform, follows my 1, 2, 3 approach to branding. Like I just said, I spent 10 years, by the way, let me rewind. My whole career, I fell into branding. I did not have a plan of doing this with my life. I fell into this out of necessity when the market crashed, because I took a cold call sales job, calling IT professionals to sell them training classes. Okay, dumbest sales job you could say.
Right.
And what I realized is that I was never going to break through the ice and get through that door if I didn't think about really if I were on the other end of the phone call, what would I want to know to remotely want to have a conversation? So I didn't know it until somebody said, well, that's your brand pitch. I had no idea this was brand. I just thought this was logic. Now, fast forward, that has become the method that I teach of what is the 1, 2, 3 punch of your message that you need to build and actually write systematically. The platform teaches you how to go through that process of defining your ideal target audiences, understanding how many layers of messaging you may need if you serve different groups and people, and then actually putting pen to paper to write this. And you don't have to be a writer or a marketer to do that. Most people are just founders going, well, I never signed up to be a marketer, but gosh, I better know what I'm saying and to whom. And can I make this easy? And can I write this in a way that sounds like something I'd actually say? That's what the platform does.
That's amazing. So, those kind of things are really incredible. And your background is just astounding. Not only are you a mom and you've run a business and you're doing consulting, but you've written a book. And I'd love to hear about that because I've talked to a few authors in the last few weeks, and I feel like I'm repeating this, that I can barely read a book, much less write one. So I know that my competency is not there to do it. And I marvel at people that have the ability. So tell us what made you decide to do that and why the message.
I have no idea. No, I'm kidding. So what's so funny is I really didn't want to write the book. I think most of us writers, you ask any author, there was never this burgeoning desire, like, I must be an author. I was like, I don't have time for that. I'm too tired. But what happened was I kept getting asked, Kate, can you write the formula down? Kate, can you write this down so I could read it on my own terms? And what I was realizing is that it was in my best interest to put pen to paper and actually write the entire Brand Trifecta model into a single book. And so my book is called Muting the Megaphone. Stop telling stories and start having brand conversations. And it's really debunking this myth for a lot of us in today's climate. We're saying, I've got to tell my story. And I'm going, pause. What you actually need to do is cut through the noise in the first 30 seconds and open the door so somebody wants to hear your story. You're leading with everything that's about you, and they don't care yet. How do you get them to a point where they do care and they've opted into a brand conversation with you? That's what that book is about. By the way, Pat, I wrote it in 10 days. You know what I did? Is I hid in my bedroom and I told my husband, I was like, there's a lot of like Cabernet and takeout pizza involved, and I'll see you in a week and a half. Okay, so he took care of the kids and I did that. It worked. We got it done. But
so what are the top takeaways? If people are out there, the book is called Muting the Megaphone, which I assume you can find about anywhere.
Yes,
if not, you can buy it at katedileo.com, the shameless web plug. But tell us the main message, the overview of what people can expect to get out of that from Muting the Megaphone.
Yeah, Muting the Megaphone follows the philosophy of how you shift from telling complex brand stories or messaging that's very complex, and how do you simplify and reverse engineer creating that 1, 2, 3 punch of a brand trifecta message that brings somebody to the actual point of conversion. The whole method here, Pat, is based on buyer psychology, and I've worked with neuroscientists and psychologists. When you tell somebody what you do, tagline, how you solve their problem, value proposition statement, and then how you're different, differentiator statements, and you write that and you deliver that verbally or on your website or whatever it is, that is the stuff that creates a conversion moment where somebody is opting in and saying, now tell me how you deliver on that. What's included, what's the pricing, what's the features, what's the benefits, the. It's really about allowing your buyers to self-select in and get there as quickly as possible.
Right. So if you're, a lot of the people that are out there are e-commerce operators. Some people think about branding in really wide scope. Some may think about packaging. Some may think about marketing and colors, things like that. If you're an e-com entrepreneur, some people out there may think, I just put my product out there and I launch my site. This is not really something for me. Now, I think that sometimes the nuances of marketing need something behind it. So what would you tell those people if you're trying to break down the barrier of getting in touch with you? Why do they need to work with you?
Well, you know what? I'll tell you this. I've worked with a ton of e-com companies. The formula still remains. In fact, let me give you a silly example. This last summer, I worked with a flower company that sells wedding flowers online. They do over 10 million a year in just selling wedding flowers, okay? Been around for over 10 years, female-owned business. And they came to me and they said, you know what? We're not really displaying a core brand message on our homepage of our website. We're kind of all over the place with our messaging. We really need to drive revenue and conversions. Right. So we wrote the message. We tested it on mobile first before going to the whole desktop site. Did you know that within 1 week of deploying their brand trifecta on their homepage, they had a 50% increase in conversions?
Wow. So just having that there, and you reinforce that all throughout the site? I mean, what is the philosophy there?
We do reinforce that. But what we're trying to also make sure is, as we know with e-com, There's a delicate line here that you also don't want so much content that someone's not driving to shop. So I always make sure that I'm thinking about the best interest of the analytics and the science behind how you build an e-com site too. We don't want to get in the way of that, right? There's got to be this balance of how much copy. So we wrote less copy than maybe I might write for like a IT services company. Great. We still had those 3 points of a brand trifecta, but it was much shorter, much cleaner. You know what's funny though? I got a call a month later and they had the highest sales day they've ever had in the history of the company since launching that brand trifecta. And I'll tell you what, I've had
so you're like the magic switch that turns on sales. That's what you're telling us. You're guaranteeing everybody a huge lift. Did you all hear that?
Oh gosh, I'm guaranteeing everyone. No, well, if you deploy it, you will see revenue. But if you just sit with it in a darn document, no, you won't. Do you know, here's the thing though. A couple other things with e-com to keep in mind. When you have the right message out on your site, it's very interesting. I've seen 2 trends in the last 3 years, 3 or 4 years especially. So when you've got your brand out there and it's doing what it's supposed to, we've actually seen a decrease in time on site. And you might go, wait, what? Hold on. We saw a decrease in the time on site for the user, but an increase in shopping. What that is signaling is that the message was that clear that they moved to the shop component faster. Right. They understood the value that quickly and were making a buying decision, which is actually a great signal. The second thing was a decrease in shopping cart abandonment rate. Yeah. So we were seeing these 2 metrics signal that when a message is doing its job, even for an e-com company, when your brand trifecta is nailed, you actually get to start to ask the question of what metrics are we tracking and why? And what's really the signal of somebody going through the shopping process in the best possible way?
It's really interesting. I think it's great. There's so many little things that make someone make a buying decision, and being able to trust that company and be able to see consistent message is really, really important. So I noticed as I was going through Brand Trifecta, and again, we're talking with Kate DiLeo with Brand Trifecta, you have a lot of different pricing tiers, which says you welcome in a lot of different nuances of customers, maybe small, maybe big corporation. Tell us the philosophy around coming in and being able to work with you. Is it something that costs a certain amount and it's going to be tough for people, or no?
So as a consultant, when you hire me to be one-on-one with you and go through an 8-week project where I'm in the room with you building your brand, that's a more expensive project of upwards of $15,000 on average. Now, when you go through the actual Brand Trifecta program on the website, that's only a few $1,000s, way better priced. And when you think apples to apples between hiring a consultant, hiring a marketing agency, etc., there's a couple big benefits here. 1, speed. 2, price point. 3, the interactive ability to get through this with the guidance to actually learn how to write. Meaning you as a founder or leader are going to know what you're saying and why. It wasn't built in a box somewhere by somebody else who didn't really understand your business. I do offer multiple tiers that attract companies that are from a solo entrepreneur all the way up to pretty large mid-sized companies. And what the difference is between how many layers of messaging do you need to write? Do I just need one tagline for my company and one value proposition that speaks to everybody? Or do I have 6 different complex buyers that might need more, and I therefore need to write a couple layers of messaging to speak to everybody across a very complex website? So the program can solve for all of that.
That's really good. So I know that sometimes when someone will come in and work with you, consulting, marketing, branding, things like that's a really, really broad topic. I feel like we've covered a lot of them, but are there other things that you'd like to touch on that entrepreneurs should take advantage of inside your consulting or that company?
Yeah, I think the big thing here, and I appreciate the question, is as you're considering branding for your organization, or you're acquiring a company, or you're at that tipping point where you're looking at what's next in the evolution of my organization, other things that come along with a brand conversation are pricing and productization. What are you selling and for how much as well? So go back to thinking about, well, how many target audiences do I have? What's the ultimate heart pain I'm solving for them? If we address that, you begin to ask the question, do I need to sell 35 things? Or is actually 10 out of 35 the ones where I'm making the most margins, easily the best sales, and are going to solve the most pain for my customers? When we start to think around that line of thinking, you begin to shore up your bottom line as well as your top line. And that is an important topic you should be thinking about when you're evaluating your brand, so that ultimately you can deliver on the promise that you just wrote in the first place.
Right. So you think mirroring that and making sure, because in this day and time, you really have to be sensitive to customers. I mean, they have to understand that you're there, for their needs. A lot of times, as amped up as some people get, and as some of the world has become, it's always good to have that message about what you really mean in your company. So, what other when you're doing these kind of deals, do you all do start to finish help with assets and logos, things like that? Let's say that's part of it. Is that part of the service as well?
Don't actually. And you're going to say, what? Well, here's the deal. I practice what I preach. I stay very much in my lane that my job is to not be a one-stop shop for everything. I am a brand writer and strategist that helps you level up your productization and messaging in your marketing. Now, I then have amazing partners that I can recommend, or you may have your own partners that can design, build the website, update copy for you, build the assets. And the beauty of that for me, Pat, is what I did is I got myself out of the weeds of the things I'm not great at, and I stay in my lane. And I can refer to other awesome small businesses that can serve my clients, and vice versa. That creates referrals and channel partnerships. I never take referral fees, but what it does is it creates this awesome situation where we just are always keeping each other in mind. And that's a beautiful way to do business.
I think the amazing thing about you, and if you take a little bit of bragging on you, I can tell that you invest yourself in your clients. It's really amazing because I spend a lot of time, I have my Shark Tank e-com company that I travel, and I do a lot of educational stuff. I'm going to do that again here, very soon with Damon John, actually on a panel for kids in Greenville, South Carolina.
Amazing.
Trying to do it. I love when people try to add value to others in a lot of philanthropic ways. I think a lot of information you have on your site, you're giving away a little bit of the secret sauce because you're 100%. Telling so many people so many things. So, I mean, what are the perfect clients for you? I mean, if someone's out there listening, is it any kind of business, or are there niches that are better?
You know what? If it's a consulting project, gosh dang it, I only work with founder-led companies. I will never take a project unless that founder is in the room. I don't care how big of a company you are. I've worked with $100 million companies, and that founder is in the room. And the reason I do that is because that founder holds the keys to the brand. Pure and simple. And there's stuff that gets unlocked that when the founder and the C-suite team is in the room, you begin to create this synergy and excitement of where we're going with the organization. And my job is to kind of herd the cats and do that. So that's my number one passion. The second passion is anything that involves technology, because I'm a self-taught developer. I worked with IT for years. I love technology, and I have the ability to help tech experts who are far smarter than I am maybe boil down all of the tech speak into a set of language that was going to make sense for their customers. Like, how do we translate that a little bit? And that's fun.
That's really amazing. Kate, it's been amazing having you in the Quiet Light podcast today. Is there anything else you want to tell people? Be sure to tell them how to get in touch with you. Your social, sure. Things like that. So people can come in and be able to contact you.
I appreciate that. Yeah, if you're curious about this whole idea around brand, if you're looking to kind of look at your own messaging, take a look at my core website, which is katedileo.com. You can check out the platform at brandtrifecta.com. Pat's going to have those in the show notes. But on my website for katedileo.com, maybe a good step is looking at the book. Maybe that's a how-to. It's 120 pages, and it just walks you through the practical steps of this. And my hope is that it gets you excited about small but very impactful things you can do to level up your brand so you're ultimately driving revenue.
That's amazing. Kate, it's been awesome having you in the Quiet Light podcast. So you got much energy. We should do this all the time. Just sit here and talk to people.
Whatever you want, sir. Also, it's called coffee.
I love it. Like I like scream and talk too fast and everything. I like 250 words a minute speaking. So, but it's been awesome coming in and joining. If anyone has interest in figuring out how to brand yourself, the biggest step is to reach out, talk to Kate, let her analyze the business, take a look. All she could do is help. But again, thanks for being the Quiet Light podcast today. It was awesome talking with you.
Thanks, Pat.